Okay, so we're going to do 16 and 17 in this video. Number 16 says select invoice number, date, and total from the invoices table plus vendor name, full address, contact's full name, and phone numbers from the vendors table, but limit the results to California vendors. Okay, we can do that. We're asked to use explicit join syntax. We can do that too. And table aliases, INV and VEN for vendors and invoices respectively. So this is like a problem that we did in the previous video where we're selecting these columns from the invoices table and then the vendor data from the vendor table, concatenated contact name. We weren't explicitly asked to do that, but in this problem, but I did it, which is fine. And the phone number. Now we're asked to use explicit join syntax with aliases, INV and VEN. So we have the invoices as INV, join vendors as VEN, on, and then, you know, one thing about table aliases, once you introduce them into the syntax, from that point forward, you have to use them. So I can't say invoices and vendors from this point forward because now they're going by their aliases. So in our where clause, or our join clause, I should say, we have inv.vendor_id equals ven.vendor ID. So using my aliases there to do that join operation. And then finally, we have the where clause limiting the results to California. Okay, and then also in number 16, we have kind of an add-on here. It says, how would we modify number 16 to include all vendors regardless of whether or not they have an invoice in the invoices table? And this gets into the whole issue of inner versus outer join. Default join, by default, all joins are inner joins, and you really don't have to think about that until you start thinking about outer joins and what we mean by that. So basically, there might be some vendors in the vendors table that have no invoices. They're just vendors that haven't placed an order yet, maybe potential vendors, or they just have no business activity yet as far as the invoices table is concerned. So by default, with just kind of a standard inner join like we were doing in the previous video and like what we have here at this moment, by default, those vendors with no activity, no invoices are not going to be included in the results. So we're not going to see a full list of vendors in the vendors table by default. We're only going to see, when we do this join, we're only going to see vendors that actually have invoices. So if maybe there are, 50 vendors in the vendors table that have no invoices, we're not going to see them in the results here with a basic inner join. And as I said, the join you do is an inner join by default unless you make it an outer join. So how would we make it an outer join? And by outer join, I mean it would just include all vendors regardless of whether or not they had an invoice, which is what I'm being asked to do here. So what we would do is we have to decide whether this is going to be a right join or a left join. And this is really easy. All you do is you look at your from clause here. Invoices is literally on the left and vendors is literally on the right, the way I've typed these out. This is on the left, this is on the right. So this is going to be a right join. You could say outer, you don't have to say outer, but once you introduce the word right versus or left in there, it's an outer join, okay? So this is going to be a right join because vendors, the way I've typed this, is on the right. Okay, and so what this means is all vendors are going to show whether or not they have an invoice. Maybe I'll highlight this and run it just so you can see our outer join at work. So here we go. I have quite a few of them. All of these vendors that have null for invoices, those are the ones that made the cut only because we made this into an outer join, a right outer join, okay? Quite a few in there, actually. So now I'm going to take out the word right. Okay, I'm going to run it again. Now we're back to the standard inner join, and none of those vendors are here. They didn't make the cut. Okay, so that was number 16. This is 17 is a union. I know I'm getting kind of lengthy here in this video. This one is actually, don't shy away from the union. A lot of students do, and I think just because there are a lot of syntax, but it's really just a lot of busy work. Unions are actually easy. Basically, we're asked to write a union query to sort vendors by region, whether they're in the eastern U.S., the Midwest, or the western U.S. And this is, I am going to give you a union on the exam, but it's not going to be the type where you have to, like in this, there would be a lot of other busy work with you looking up, okay, which states are in the East, which states are in the Midwest or considered Midwest. So you're not going to have to do that, but you are going to have to do a union. Let me show you the data here. Okay, so the results should look like this. So, for example, Ohio is considered the eastern U.S., and so they would get the label eastern U.S. Midwest, obviously, that's us, Wisconsin, Missouri, and so on. And so we're the Midwest. And then the West, obviously, California and whatnot. So this column here, the first one, that's a column that does not exist in the table. Okay, we are creating that table. We call that an ad hoc column, where we're creating that column just for the sake of our query. It only exists while the query is running. And this is the region that will assign to the various states, okay? So I think let's not even think about the union. I'm going to cut this and let's make this simple, all right? So we'll start with the East. We're going to select, look at that, a hard-coded Eastern U.S. as region, okay? So that's going to result in this column name region, this data in that column, all right? And this is coming from vendors where vendor state is in New York, New Jersey, all those eastern states in the vendors table. Okay, now I'm home free. This is the pattern that we'll use for the Midwest and also for the western states. So we're going to use the word union. When you're doing a union, you're just combining multiple query results together. So this was the first one. That's for the East. I do union. Think of union as like a piece of tape, taping it all together, taping all your results together. Okay, now the Midwest is up. We have Midwest hard-coded as region, and then vendor state in Illinois, Indiana, and so on. Okay, the Midwestern states, which I just probably looked up. And union, finally the western states. Okay. It's just busy work. All of the thought and the work goes into the first one and getting that in place. And then it's really just copy and paste and change from there.